Hey, welcome to the All Shift Podcast. Today's actual guest, a guy named Kash Hasworth. Now, there are a lot of people I run into on a daily basis and also on a weekly basis in this industry that they got some stories that just you go, wow, how did that person make it? Kash is one of those people. He has this crazy story of going from cell block to, pretty much CEO and this amazing company making seven figures, doing some amazing things in the industry of sales and solar and started in wireless. But like his story of what he went through as a kid and pretty much taking over, I don't want to call like his, he took over his dad's role as the head of like a drug ring, we'll call it, like at 14. The dude's story is kind of crazy, but you got to dive into the episode because it's cool is to see his heart and his humanity. He's a father of three now, doing some amazing things to serve people, and it's all been fueled by his desire to find a way to be the best him. It's like the root core piece of it. And in doing so, not only just make the best him, but make those around him great as well. It's how he got to have the great success and the growth he has had. So without further ado, let's dive into the episode. Hey, everybody, welcome into the show. You've already heard what we're talking about, so let's dive into the conversation. I'm going to invite my new friend, we'll call it. I don't know if it's a new friend. It's a new guy I met. He's a friendly guy. I'm always weird when people go like, my new friend. It's like, we just met, you know what I mean? So a new guy that I met today, Kash Hasworth. How you doing, man?
Good, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm looking to have a hang out conversation with you. It's actually the first podcast I'm recording. So I landed from Japan yesterday, a week there with my family, and I'm borderline like wanting to fall asleep right now. I'm good. You wouldn't notice it if I didn't say that. You would have no clue.
I was on the road an hour before this, about 2 hours before this podcast. Got here an hour early, and as soon as I got home, I jumped on the treadmill to shake off the
wake up.
Yeah,
I get it. My wife is still asleep, like so she's upstairs. I have the studio here, our master's above, and then like my kids on the other side of the house. And everyone's still sleeping but me. And so I know my wife probably like pissed because she's like, I could hear you yelling down there. I'm like, I'm not yelling. I'm just talking. It just sounds loud.
That's funny.
But yeah, I totally get it.
Me flush,
let's dive in, man. I want to talk more to you, what you do. I think that from what I have researched, the minimal amount that I research, which is intentional, I want to be able to meet you in real time. You got a cool backstory, man. You the things that you've excelled in are things that take really unique human traits to excel in that I think a lot of people could utilize. And if they could learn or master them in some manner, have vastly more success than they're having. So I start the podcast with one question, which it's simple, straightforward. Let's say I'm walking around Virginia, which is where you're located. And I sit down in a coffee shop and I look at you as a cool guy wearing an LA hat, but I'm not in LA. And you, for some reason, we don't know each other, feel compelled to turn and start talking to me. In your opinion, why should I listen to you?
Great question. I would say, I think life is shaped by perspective. And I think that the reason why I've been able to have abundance in my life and truly attract high caliber of people into my life has allowed me to go from cell block to boardroom and scale multiple businesses and also sell at disruptive levels personally is because of my perspective. Everything is working in my favor, even when it's not. And to dive into that a little bit, it's like, even when I fail, even when I fall, no matter the level of intensity of that adversity, of that hardship, of that difficulty, it's ultimately working for me, not working against me. So, when you have someone that has that kind of perspective, I strongly encourage you to invite them into the conversation, invite them into your circle, because the reality is, life is a glimpse. We're going to die. So getting caught up in the complexity of all that life has to offer and letting your circumstances kind of define you and where you are and letting, fear and negativity consume you. It's not a life that I choose to live. And, for anyone that has places to go, you shouldn't either.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think there's something to the idea of there's a statement somebody said one time is you can do anything, but you cannot do everything. And so like the thing you choose, lean into it. Now, this perspective is one that I harbor myself. I'm like, I'm gonna do everything. Why not just try it all out?
Yep.
And if it happens, like, it doesn't go great, then what did I learn from it and try it
That's right.
again? Some people go, oh, it's masochistic. Why would you subject yourself to that crazy
Yep.
again? Where did this develop for you? Because it's not a usual human mentality. And my guess is it wasn't something you were born with, or maybe it was. But where did that mentality like derive from?
It's a great question. You know, when it comes to a lot of the skill set that I have, when it comes to sales ability and leadership and that sort of thing, I would say it's most certainly not an innate ability. But when it comes to
Mm,
perspective, it's something, I've always been more of an introvert in my thoughts, and I've always had, a very sharp perspective as far as I can remember. But, I would say
mhm,
what really, I guess, made it so defined would be experiencing loss from very close friends of mine. And when you
mhm,
put loss into perspective and you lose somebody that's a brother of yours, and it really hits you in the face that, life shouldn't be so serious, right? So,
mm.
I think
Yeah,
it really stems from that, and it was really the pivotal point in my life where, I had to realize that if I'm gonna change my destination, I gotta change my course, you know? So,
yeah.
I think I would
I
just
like that,
attribute
man.
it to that.
It's a good lesson. I my son right now, he's 18 and he's a freshman in college. Well, he just finished his freshman year. He's actually a sophomore in college now. And he has this dynamic where like he waits at the last minute and then things go by and I go, it's weird. Like he's in a situation he might lose some of the academic scholarship
Yeah.
he has. And my wife's like, what's going on? What do we do? And I go, you know what? He needs to experience
Yep.
loss. He hasn't experienced it
Yep.
yet. And it's hard for her to hear that, and I go, I think you need to realize that 30-year-old
Yep.
him needs 18-year-old him to learn a lesson before he's 30 with more responsibilities.
Most certainly.
And now I'm not saying that like if you want to lose a friend or anything, but I think there is a great teacher in loss because it reorients you to like, oh,
Yep.
like whether it's not as important. No one gets out of this thing
Yep.
alive, right? Or certain ways to
Yep.
function and work. Do you mind kind of unpacking? Because previously you had mentioned cell block to CEO and 7-figure business and all that fun
Yep.
stuff. Do you mind taking us back to that pocket of time? Because I know people hear that and go, oh, it's cool, but I don't think they really grasp like the intense emotional experience of those windows of
Yeah.
time that people endure and go through. I've interviewed people. I myself was arrested at one point and didn't have to thankfully go too deep into the system, but like I've had those things where I'm like, damn,
Yep.
like, this is about to get ripped from
Yep.
me. Can you walk us through that journey?
Yeah. Prior to, you know, coming home and kind of changing paths, just my
Yeah, yeah, that
upbringing.
window
So,
back there.
my pops is a notorious drug dealer. I
Mm,
essentially inherited that business when I was around 14, and
mm,
he ended up the state ended up kicking the door in and took him away, and he ended up serving 6 years in prison. And at the time, my mother, she had some health issues, and I'm not making excuses for, stepping up to the plate and being a provider, but, it was the only thing that I knew. And I think, people act out the information that they're exposed to. I think, our
mhm,
reality is a reflection of the information that we absorb around us, and that was my environment. So, I was deep in the drug game around 14, 15 years old. And, at the time, my pops, he's when you look at him, you can see he's been through some stuff. He's had a hard life
mhm,
himself, and he had a very strong reputation. So here I am, 14, 15, trying to live up to his legacy, right? And, it just brought about aggressive behaviors, unfortunately, and
mhm,
attracting the wrong crowd. And, one thing leads to the next. I'm trying to defend my name and gain respect to continue to be a provider in that respective space. And it just led to aggressive behaviors, and an opportunity kind of presented itself. And one thing led to another. And, here I am in this shootout. Someone gets shot and I go to
mhm,
prison for 2 years.
mm. It's crazy. It's crazy how that does work that way, right? It's like that's what you knew.
Yep.
Like I think when we're kids, we're honestly thrust into situations that we're not aware of till we're like way past
Yep.
it. Of like life is different. I was in foster care, so that time I was given away, and I was running around doing the whole foster care thing, and you don't know another existence.
Exactly.
So
That's
then
why,
it's like,
I've listened to your story, and it's just, man, it's painful to hear. There's a lot of pain in your story. For me, I didn't really feel that pain. I guess I was
Mm,
desensitized to it. So for me, looking
interesting.
at it on the surface, there wasn't a lot of I didn't feel like it was, painful. Growing up in that environment is just what I knew, right? And I made the
Yeah.
best of it.
Mhm. Yeah. Gotcha. So 2 years go by.
Yep,
You have this experience. You come out.
yep,
The recidivism rate for most people at that age, and those of you guys, recidivism means a repeat offender. Kind of that's high. But so when you left, like, what was the new direction trajectory? Was it like I'm done with this, I move on? Did you kind of find yourself floating back? Like, where was that? I call it awe
yeah.
shift moment where all of a sudden you're like, I'm done with this.
You know,
Like, when did that take place? Window.
so when I first got out, I obviously knew one thing. I didn't want to revert back to the lifestyle that I knew. But at the time,
Mm,
my mother's still struggling. My father is still incarcerated. I had a lot of close friends that was incarcerated at this point. My best friend, the one that I speak of that passed away, he was at the time stationed over in Germany, and I was just depressed and trying to figure life out. And initially, just being honest, I reverted back to what I knew and I started selling drugs again. And
mm,
when one of my close friends came home, he just started on his nonsense again, and I didn't want to be a part of anything that would lead me back into prison. And
mm,
I guess just the exposure to him again was like, man, I got to figure something out, and I started cutting people off, and it came to me having a deep conversation with God and just breaking down and being vulnerable. I remember one day, I used to take off walking just to kind of clear my head, and I came
mm.
to a picnic table at this abandoned elementary school, and I just sat there, and I didn't even know what to ask at the time, right? Because again, this is all I've been exposed to.
Yeah.
All I knew was I wanted normalcy. I wanted a different environment. So I just sat there in tears, sobbing, speaking out loud, begging God to expose me to the right people, to the right information and the right resources that could help me live, a life different than everything that I knew at the time. And from there, opportunities started to present themselves. People started to show up.
Mhm. Gotcha. What people? 'Cause it's a big gap to cover right there. Because it's one thing to go, I'm at this table, and things
Yep.
show up, right? Because I know it's one thing to make a commitment, have a moment like
Yep.
that, which is a beautiful moment. I've had it myself. Like, what do I do with all this? It
Yep.
sucks. I want to change something, right? But then sometimes I would feel like when I was back in the past, I felt ashamed to enter new
Hmm.
rooms, right? Because I'm like, this is my past. I don't belong
Yep.
here. But then also, like, I didn't know if I had the skill sets. I was like a little bit worried. So when these opportunities came, how did you step out of the mentality of like, this is who I am and I'm gonna enter something new? Did you battle that kind of thing? And
It,
what were those first kind of opportunities that came across
naturally,
your
you
path?
would think so, right? You would think that there would be just insecurities. But,
Yeah.
I was telling Ebony the other day when we were having a conversation, I was like, prison was the best thing that ever happened to me. Going through that
Mm,
adversity, right? That
yeah.
hardship, that difficulty was the best thing that ever happened to me. All of the chaos and the intense environments and situations was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because what it
Yeah.
does is it's either going to breed a ton of fear and put you into this place of comfort and insecurity, or it's going to make you the strongest person in the room. And when you
Mhm.
go through that, it sets like a benchmark, right? For your intensity level. So when
Yeah.
it comes to the corporate space, I think the reason why I've been so successful and had such a fierce, I got to find a way to make this happen is because, I've never been intimidated in any kind of room that I've shared with anyone, because there's no
Mhm.
one with, no matter what their background looks like, right, that is going to match the intensity level of mine. So there's no amount of
Yeah.
failure, there's no amount of setbacks and hardship and loss and terminations
Mhm.
that's going to sink below the level of intensity that I've experienced through my life. So it gave
Mhm.
me a ton of confidence, if anything.
Different chip on
Yep,
the shoulder. I get that. I think the football thing did that for me too, because I walk into rooms of like
yep,
13, people in the boardroom that don't look like me, and I can handle myself, man. I can easily do it with like it's not like I call it a little bit of a swag, but it's not an
yep,
arrogance. It's like you can say something, but I'm not cowering, I'm not crumbling. And I think people like that, they can feel that.
yep.
So how did you first apply this, right? Because I like
Yep.
this mentality. This is actually one that I try to teach my kids. Like, hey, you gotta have that little bit. You gotta earn
Yep.
that. There's gonna be something you go through an experience. Sports the way to do it.
Yep.
Prison, military is ways of getting those. And you're right. Some people get carved off to the side, but those that come to the top, man, they
Yep.
float. So where did you first apply this, and how did it enter into the world where eventually you became this consultant, this coach, this a person that does everything in the realm of like even sales? Like that's a whole world you've built into and helped companies expand to multiple locations and
Yep.
things. How did that first
Yeah.
start?
So a neighborhood friend exposed me to a program called Workforce Career Center. In Workforce, at the time, I don't know if the program is still around, but it was a federally funded program. And what they did is they would
Mm,
take at-risk youth, kids that had, that came from a low income home, that had a criminal record or any kind of barrier. They would take those kids
okay.
and they would place them at a job site with an employer to gain real life experience. So when I went through
Mm,
that initial like mock interview where they're seeing, what's going to align best with your personality and skill set, they wanted me to work at Workforce Career Center. And
mm,
I was essentially, like a youth case manager. And the
okay.
goal was to create like a youth liaison position for me. So I could go around to schools and help other at risk youth by sharing my story and everything that I'd came from. And
Hmm.
they pitched the idea to corporate and it got shot down and the program ended. So I found myself in the marketplace, still confused, still trying to figure out life, still trying to find an employer that would take, a felon. And I came across this opportunity in the wireless industry and um I started working as a part-time sales rep in this little shabby little kiosk inside of our mall in Martinsville,
Hmm.
Virginia, and
Hmm.
my career exploded from there.
Hmm. How so? I can. Here's the thing. I think I get it. Like I
Yeah.
can. Whenever you go through stuff like you're talking about, even like for me with foster care, there's a certain way that you learn to carry
Yep.
yourself to the gift of
Yep.
gab, we'll call, like you understand how to bounce a conversation back and forth, how to create tension, like the intensity you talked
Yep.
about. Some people avoid that tension filled moment. They feel icky and you can see they can get unsettled. And so like,
Mhm.
should I buy this thing? But when you have a sense of like, I know who I am and you can be in a
Yep.
tension filled conversation and still,
Yeah, yeah.
that's a special. So when you excelled, like what were the things that you think stood out from you and your counterparts that allowed you to be
Yep.
so successful?
So, I don't want the audience to mistake that confidence for just arrogance and this know-it-all by any means. I would enter a room as if I knew absolutely nothing. Even if I knew everything
Mm,
about the subject, I'm a student. So
yeah.
just being receptive to what everybody has to say and learn from everyone, especially the people that are really great at what they do. So it started by, me carrying out what I now have developed into a framework that's a part of my book, but it's called the FAR method. And essentially, it's where you find people that are really great at what they do. You
Hmm.
analyze their behaviors, their habits, their thought process, everything about them. You adopt those to kind of make the most elite version of yourself, and you continually refine that process. So when I first started out, the company hadn't been in business for 7 months, but at the time
Hmm.
they had several layers of leadership. They had a store manager, they had a district manager, a VP of sales, and I was just learning from all these people, and I knew where I wanted to go, but I also wasn't going to let all the layers of leadership deter me. So it was just for me looking at it, it was like I have to master every single role because I know where I'm going to ultimately end up. So the guy that was
Hmm.
training me, thankfully, he was one of the top performers in the company, if not the most productive sales rep in the company. So I would just study his behaviors naturally. Where the
Hmm.
company was just starting out, they didn't have a handbook. They didn't have like nothing, no
No.
standard operating procedures, no training material. Like we had like a 2-page brochure to learn the rate plans. Um,
Yeah.
for the phones that we were selling, but that was it. Like I was thrown to the wolves. So I had to figure it
Hmm.
out. What I knew for certain was I wasn't going to revert back to the lifestyle that I was living before. So I had to figure it out,
Yeah.
either find a way or make a way. So I just started
Hmm.
studying his behaviors and habits, and every time that I saw something, this guy was very charismatic. He had a ton of personality, and it was outside of my comfort zone because In a
Mm.
kiosk environment, those are the people you avoid eye contact with, right?
All day long. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but he was really good about getting anyone to just stop in their tracks and talk to him. He was just witty, and every time that, I heard him say something that would catch someone's attention and get them to stop and talk to this guy, I just jotted it down, and I would
You
adopt
know,
that and use that in my approach. So,
I
I
like
would
that,
say
man. So
that's the
success
biggest thing.
from finding, yeah, it's just
There's
finding
elevation and
somebody. So
observation.
yeah. So how do you take a look? So honestly, my work's an identity. I don't know how much you know about that, but it's kind of the same thing I do. I go, you should find someone where you like the way they're expressing themselves in that area. Cause you might like how he did the sales thing, but maybe you didn't like how he talked to his wife or how he's a father, right? You may not like that, but in that area you go, I like that.
You
I
gotta
like what he's
cherry
doing. Let me
pick.
pay attention to it. Now I do know this. Sometimes people will look at someone going, okay, they're successful. What and here's what happens. I think sometimes you look at someone, they're successful and go, I know that I'm not as successful. Let me demonize them. And with this, they don't say it actively in
Yeah,
their mind, but they go, oh, he's doing like this, and I would do it, didn't I? And but they don't realize that he's successful. No matter what it is. And what they do is they can either bury the person in terms of like, under judgments where they don't feel so bad, or do what you did and go, how do I learn from this
yep.
person? Has that been something that you've found as an active conversation? You never had that thought
I
before
I
of like,
never I
should
never really had that thought, I just did it instinctively.
I like that. Yeah, it's a good thing. 'Cause I think there's parts of it that I'm finding with your existence and your upbringing where you had this cool, almost an innate knack, and I want to find it. I don't know where it's at just yet, but and it's a cool thing. I think it's a part. Like how they say sometimes the worst coaches are the high level athletes,
Yeah,
because we haven't figured out exactly why we're great. And within the area of what you've done, I love that there's been these cool experiences in what you've done, and there's definitely some spot or some moment and it may have been years and years back where like something triggered you to go in this direction mentally. And I love it because I think that that's, you're not burdened by the other part of it, the other
yep,
mind of it. I've had to work through some things, but I love where the mind is because it's allowed you to succeed so much faster because you don't have that baggage or that thing pulling you back of the judgment of the thoughts. So you analyze this guy, you take a look at what he's
yep.
doing, and you say, career exploded. What did it look like to expand up? Because I know eventually you helped a company. I don't know if it's this one expand like 28
Yeah,
locations, right?
I a
And
lot of
so
it
how did
was
that progression?
a lot of it was just stepping into that role before I was actually paid for it. So, an
Ah, okay.
initiative, man, it will take you exactly where you wanna go. And I think that's one of the
Yeah.
biggest things that I look for when I'm recruiting is, having someone that's got a strong personality, but someone that just has a little bit of give a damn, that they care, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Mhm.
initiative alone is gonna outperform some of the most talented salespeople. But,
Mhm.
looking back, one thing that I did was, I would always BCC the owner on all of my emails when I took over that
Mhm.
location. And when he saw how I would consistently communicate and have calls with my team in an effort to, take the location to its greatest potential, he came to me and said, "Hey, yeah, I love the format of these communications. Could you do that company wide?" And
Mm.
at that point, I'm taking over the communication company wide and sending out sales reports at this point and doing a lot of high level responsibilities. But I'm still managing this single location. But
Yeah.
that showing that initiative and then taking on that responsibility without taking on the pay, it probably poor
Mhm.
negotiating on my part. I get it, but it paid
Sure.
off. But that led to me managing a second location. That led me managing starting a third location from the ground up. I went out,
Mhm.
traveled 3 hours to a location in Charlottesville, and we didn't have any sister store nearby. There was no one to relieve me when I needed to go home. So when I showed up to that, I checked into a hotel and I didn't check out. And I stayed there for
Wow.
11-hour days, day in and day out until
Yeah.
I found a staff. I trained that staff and
Mhm.
they could sustain in my absence. And taking
Mhm.
on that kind of responsibility, it sent a very encouraging message to the owner. And from there, I just started duplicating those same results, and we continue to scale up and bring in additional leaders and that sort of thing. So I think the reason why
Yeah.
I was able to achieve one successful location is because of my thought process of how I went into um, staffing that location. I understood
Mhm.
that if I was going to go into this location and find a ton of talented salespeople, I would constantly have to be the store manager. So as opposed to me looking for a ton of salespeople, I need to find a leader that can replace myself and sustain in my absence. So I
Mhm.
think just having that unique perspective going into it was partly what contributed to a lot of the success and led to, multiple store expansion.
Growth, yeah.
Yep.
I don't think it probably did. I think it majorly did. My wife has, amazing, successful business, what she does. She has not yet figured out how to let go of the reins, though.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not that it's a bad thing, but I think there's something that happens when individuals have this mentality of like, only I can be this good. And it's like,
Yep.
no, 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 no. You are amazing when you can make somebody else as good as you currently
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
having that ability to elevate up's the whole piece of it. And as you progress and did that, did you find there were new levels to step into? My assumption is yes, right?
Yep.
Because they say new levels, new devils. What were like as you started progressing and you're teaching someone to take your job, we'll call
Yep.
it, what did it look like for you to look at the next progression of your career?
At the root of leadership, I think is elevation. I think that's the core of what leadership is. It's not necessarily influence. If it's influence, you're not fulfilling your obligation as a leader. You have to go into that
Mhm,
position to elevate the people around you, right? Because ultimately, that's what people want out of a leader. They want to earn more, they want to make more, they want to be happier. So if you're not elevating people, then you're just falling short of your responsibility as a leader, you know?
mhm.
But,
I can see that.
continually
Yeah.
learning, I think the challenge is you're capped at whatever leadership level you are. So if you're not aggressively investing in your own self, you're not gonna be able to attract the next level leader that's a little bit better than you. And if you
True.
can, you might not be able to retain them. So it's critically
Yeah.
important to focus on self-development, your leadership ability when it comes to elevation, when it comes to communication, when it comes to accountability, when it comes to your own sales ability, right? All of those things is going to allow you to elevate your own leadership and be able to attract even higher caliber of people. So that way,
Mhm.
you can step outside of that position. But I would say for
I
the
agree.
misses, the biggest piece of advice I have is, set parameters. Once you have the guidelines in place, right? That's all you need, and then you start to
Yeah.
manage
Oh,
to
I
those
thought the same
guidelines.
thing.
I'm sure you've preached it, but
Oh my goodness, man. Have I tried? Have I tried? Have I tried? She just, she's like, I have a thing I like and I like how it
yep,
runs. And she does. It runs well. The problem is she also
yep,
complains about certain things. I'm like, you could solve the you ever seen that show or not show, it's like a little clip by BuzzFeed. It's like it's not about the
yep.
nail. You ever heard this
I have
before?
not, no.
Oh my goodness. It's so BuzzFeed does VSV. If you guys get a chance, go Google. It's not about the nail. It's this guy with his wife, and she has this nail in her forehead, and she's like, I want you to listen to me. I got this pain. It's kind of in this vicinity here, and he goes, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear about this nail. I don't think it. Just listen to me. Like so, he's like listening to her complain about this thing, and he can see the problem, which is the nail,
Yep,
but she doesn't want to talk about it. So it's like this
that's
thing. I go, yeah,
hilarious.
that's what it
I
is. It's
saw
not about
something
the
very
nail. It's
similar on Instagram the other day.
yeah, yeah.
It was like, "Just shut up and listen."
People, man. Yeah, you just gotta just sit back and watch it all unfold. So you got this thing you're building. You do some things. I'd love you to kind of what's called be braggadocious. What has been like the climb to your career? Like, where's your career? Because I want to be able to talk more about the book, right? I want to dive into
Sure.
that, but I really want to make sure people understand why you're the person to read from this book, like why they should listen to you, why they should actually go get this thing. So I will love you to take me to the we'll call it braggadocious. Don't hold anything back. What have you been able to accomplish in this industry?
Well, when we were scaling that business, we had 28 locations across 4 states for Intellos Wireless. Intellos was a regional carrier. You may not have heard of them.
Hmm.
So it's like a
Hmm.
Verizon or a Sprint, just on a smaller scale. They only operated in 4
Yeah,
states, but we grew that
yeah.
company to be their number 1 dealer by sales volume, and they had locations that had, 100 plus locations, and here we were sitting
Mm,
as the number 1 dealer by sales volume with 28. So
mhm.
we recruited really well, and we kept the main thing. And that's how we
Yeah.
were able to achieve that. But fast forward, I'm no longer in the wireless industry because we ended up having to explore an exit strategy because Intellos got acquired by Sprint. We took the company through that acquisition, and we had to convert all of our locations over to the Sprint brand But shortly thereafter,
Hmm.
like 18 months into that, they merged with T-Mobile.
Hmm.
And at that point, in order to be a T-Mobile dealer, you had to have like 300 plus locations. So, we
Hmm.
knew that if we were to leave on their terms, we wouldn't have left with much. That's why the owner started exploring an exit strategy. And at the time, that company was all I knew. And I,
Yeah.
I found myself back in the marketplace. And my wife, I ran the company. The owner was absentee. He was not involved in the business at all. And my wife, she did
Hmm.
payroll and HR. So, this was our livelihood. It's everything that we knew.
Yeah.
So, I found
Yeah.
myself back in the marketplace, and I had some close friends of mine that were in the wireless industry, and they recruited me. I took on the opportunity and I was back at a sales rep position, but it had, explosive upside to it. It was a commission only position, and I got into that space for about a year and a half when I was a sales rep there. I was their top performer out of 400 plus salespeople. Um,
Hmm.
and shortly thereafter, I got into a leadership role and a director role and helped them scale a door knocking team. And shortly after that, they actually went under. So
Hmm.
again, found myself back in the
Back
marketplace,
in.
and
Yeah.
that's what led to me starting Solar Ignite Group.
Hmm. So unpack that because I did read a little bit about that, but I don't know too much about it.
So what Solar Ignite?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's just a solar sales company. We do
Hmm.
residential solar sales. So
I
customer
like it.
inquires
Yeah.
about solar for their home to get off, get away
Yeah.
from the utility company, and we run those appointments, get the project in motion, get it installed, done.
Hmm. Yeah, that's cool. I like that you do what you do. You know what you do well, and you stay there, and you just find new ways to express that skill set. It's kind of like it's like being a person. They say, there's actually a quote that goes, a jack of all trades, and a master of none." It's something like that. I don't know what it calls it. Something like don't be a jack of all trades. But the
Yeah.
idea is like when you're a jack of all trades, it's not always the best thing. But if you know what you're good at, especially in a specific trade or industry, and you dive into it deeply, you build out this structure and this ability,
Yep.
right? You're taking to other places, which is cool because I think some people they go, "Oh, this isn't working." They jump to something new. They don't stay in. But I love it. You're like, no, I did this really
Yep.
well. I'm just going to find new places to do it, and built into this whole new
That's it.
just structure, discussion of what it is you do, and just taking it to new industries. So you're doing this. You have this company built out. You're doing well. What was the catalyst to a book coming out of you? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that do sales, but they're not like, I'm gonna write a book on this
Yeah.
stuff, right? And the title's pretty cool too. I'm gonna let you share the title because like it is like an oxymoron in a
Yeah.
kind of unique way, which I think does grab attention. But share the book if you don't
Yeah.
mind.
So the book called Selling Keeps You Broke: A Holistic Approach to Disruptive Sales Performance to Earn Big. I
Mm,
think the reason why I wrote the book is it was easy. First of all, I've
yeah,
it took me 29 days to write the book. And
that's
I
cool.
say that, but truly, I've been documenting everything in the book for my entire career. So if I were to
Mm,
show you my digital notebook here, you would see all of these, frameworks and quotes and a lot of the critical parts of the book I've been documenting and writing down for the last, 15 years. So I had
yeah,
everything. It's just a matter of putting it in the right format. But it
yeah,
comes from a place of, I'm a father of three boys, and I
okay,
truly want to give them the blueprint to go out and win and be
mhm,
wildly successful. So
yeah,
it really starts with that. Obviously, I want to help elevate other sales professionals, take their skill set to the next level. But at the core of it, I dedicated this thing to my kids first and foremost.
I like that, man. How old are the kids?
12, 5, and 2, 2.5.
Hey, that good age, man. It's that good window.
Yeah.
I can't do it. You're a better man than me, dude. The idea of having I'm gonna have new kids when they're grandkids. That's when I'll have some new kids, and I'm in no rush for that. We'll have I can wait
2
another
is
like 5, 10
manageable.
years. I'll be good.
3 is instant
Yeah.
chaos. Like it is a
Oh yeah,
zoo.
we had twins. We went from 1 to 3, and it was nuts. So we I don't know if you read my story, but like we were divorced for like 3 years
Yeah.
and got remarried about 7 years back. So we have a really cool story, but it is, dude, it's crazy. But I love that you're trying to find ways to give that because that's the same thing I do,
Yep.
man. I want to make sure I give them I want to get them to a point of my mentality far earlier than I got to it.
That's it.
If I can do that, then we're good. But then I do find this window. Maybe this is something where you maybe think about this, maybe you don't, but I go, I don't want to be at any point in time irrelevant to my
Yep.
kids. I may not know the new app or new thing going on, but I will have wisdom
Yep.
and at least human growth. So like when my kids come to me at 60 years old, if I'm still around, I want to be able to be at like 80 and whatever, like still get them insight because I'm still growing and
That's
learning.
it.
Do you find yourself as you're in this process and you've created this kind of, we'll call it blueprint, some idea for them? Do you find yourself still progressing to try and learn more? I'm assuming the answer is yes, but what does that look like for you now?
Yeah. Success is a moving target. Yeah, if you're going to be successful, if you're going to be a strong leader or strong salesperson, or the most elite person in your respective industry, you have to understand that it's a constant, ever evolving process. You constantly have to be taking your skill set to the next level. So
Mhm.
I'm learning every single day. Every single day am I finding a new video to just absorb new content, right? Continually
Mhm.
refine my skill set or learn something new. So it's ever evolving.
Yeah.
And I instill the same practices in my kids. Like my 12-year-old, before he can touch the PS5, he has to watch at least 3 videos of my choice before
Mhm.
he can even touch his PlayStation. So,
I like it. I like it, man. I don't make them watch videos, but I make them do things. Like there's certain chores they got to do. Or like our kids, they're athletes. We're an athlete
yep,
family, so it's like you're going to train, you're going to watch
yep,
something that has to do with that.
yep,
It's just, and we have him read. I have my son books to read. Like
yep.
he's read Outlier. I have him reading this book called Greatness right now too. Like there's because I do want them to have those little seeds in
How
there.
was greatness?
But,
I'm curious.
so it's a $100
I
book.
know
I don't know if it
I've
gives those
seen
like
the ads. I've yet to buy it.
yeah. I dude, it's a great book. I'm not gonna lie, like, I would buy it again. In fact, I considered it because I sent it off to my son in college. He hasn't started reading it yet. But I've debated buying a second one, so I have another copy here for the family, like, my wife and my youngest haven't read it yet.
Yep,
And so in my head, I go, but here's the thing, it's cool about it's kind of what you've done in my guess with your book, is he's able to get so much through in the most concise amount of words. Like, there's that great quote that somebody sent a letter to someone was long, and he goes, "I'm sorry the letter's so long. I didn't have time to make it shorter." Which is this mentality of like when you know something
yep,
really well and you've got the time thought through, you can
yep,
make this one point just it could be a sentence or two and it has so much like, depth to it. So he writes it in that manner. It's 111
yep.
pages and it's very well worth the purchase. I promise you, you will not be disappointed.
I'm gonna check it out.
Who's the book for? I didn't even ask that question. Like, so we got this book. It's obviously, about selling. Is it just for salespeople? Is it for anybody? Like, who's the book designed for when you were writing it?
Primarily sales professionals, um,
Yeah.
and obviously sales leaders, because they need to be able to instill these same practices into their sales team, help take their
Yeah.
sales team to the next level. So, but at the end of the day, everything that we do in some form or fashion revolves around selling in some form or fashion. So,
Yeah. I agree. I fully agree. I'm in the middle right now of a company where on one side I have this company called Dark Work, which is coaching, consulting, that kind of
yep,
thing. But then I have a company where I teach people how to speak and run a business like mine. And we have like that area of like sales is always a fun thing to figure out because we do this program. It's a high ticket program, but it's finding the right salespeople and getting them prepared and getting them up to speed. And like that's always the interesting area, right? And so I haven't broke that code yet. So maybe I'll pick this book up and give it to my guys and be like, hey, read
it's
this
powerful.
because we need to figure this
I
thing.
think you'll like it.
Because yeah, and I'm sure they will. I want my people to be better. I think if you take care of your people, they take care of the
Yep.
people that you may work with in time. As you progress and get this book out to the world, I know it came out this year. Like, what are the hopes for the book to do? Like, obviously, you can be like, I just want someone to read it. You've mentioned it's for your kids. Is there, when you sat in your quiet space and this thing was out to the world, like, what was the vision you had of what it could do and what it could reach?
Man, I didn't even set a goal. I know that I'm falling short here, but
Mhm.
whatever happens, happens. All I know is I'm going on all cylinders and just going to continue to, have guest appearances on podcasts and promote the book as aggressively as I can, and whatever happens,
Yeah.
happens.
I like it, man. That's how I did my book too. It was like it was like a cathartic feeling to get it out. Like I'm like, it's out,
Yep.
and then we'll see what it does in the world. And sometimes it happens, man. Sometimes the books just go out and they kill it. Sometimes they take time to get momentum, and then they're great in the pocket that they're in. So yeah, man, just let it be what's supposed to be. I guess that's the
Yep.
push. I know that the whole idea, like, well, you should have a goal, what you want to do. Like then it gives rigidity to
Yep.
it, and then it feels like it's not,
Exactly.
So
One
yeah,
thing that I've never been a fan of is like 5, 10-year goals. And apologize in
Yeah.
advance if that's you, that's your cup of tea.
No, it's not.
But anything that's beyond 3 months for me is just entirely too long. Like, I think with
Mhm.
one single decision, your life could be just insanely different. So when
I
you have
agree.
that kind of rigid blueprint for a 5-year plan, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have wrote the book,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of things that
Yeah.
I've been able to achieve that I wouldn't have achieved with a rigid 5-year blueprint.
Yeah, I agree. I'm like 9 months to a
Yeah.
year. I think I can do that. And I think it, but it's also it's taken time to get to that
Yep.
point. Before I did have like much shorter,
Yeah.
but now I know what two things I do. Those are the only two things I do. I'm gonna get stupidly good at
Yep.
those two things, and so I go, that's what it is. But I do know you're right, man. The industry can change.
Yep.
Things can adjust. Shoot, AI is gonna come in, and I was gonna be me in like a recorded hologram on the stage in the next 5 years. Who knows, man? It's nuts what the world's turning into, but there's never going to be a replacement, in my opinion, for like a true, genuine, like you have, like a
Yep.
salesperson. It's a human trait, human skill
Yep.
that must be developed. So it's awesome to see somebody who has, it seems like a really cool base of humanity behind it, experience that definitively is unique to you, but also a heart of service. Like I can tell there's some part who goes, I want to bring this out to more people because I think that there is some other part of fulfillment that comes from people when you see others win
Yep.
beyond you. Like it's, you
1,000%.
can have your great success. When I get to create something, you see somebody else do it, it's like, dude, that's awesome. I get to be part of
Yep.
that. And that's a cool progression of it all. Man, I've thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I have a final two
Sure.
questions that I will ask you. Maybe you've heard the last one. We'll get to that when it comes time. But let's start with the first one. One, where can I send people to get more information about you? Grab the book. Like, where's the place I should direct them?
Yeah. So, as far as me personally, I'm on all social media channels. It's Cash Hasworth. You can explore, what's inside of the book on my website at cashhasworth.com. And, if you're truly passionate about elevating your skill set and generating the most elite version of yourself, I strongly encourage you to give me a follow. I share a ton of just bite-sized nuggets on sales and leadership and recruiting and everything in between. So everything is all at
Mhm.
Cash Hasworth.
I like it. It's a good website too, man. I looked it up. It's a good mobile too. You did a good
I
job there.
appreciate
I
it.
like
And
it.
the book is
Yeah,
on
buddy.
all major retailers: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books
Uh,
a Million.
I like it. Well, someone's coached you well. Someone's coached you well because you want you much. Oh, it's my team told me too. Any place that sells books, like, oh, okay, I got to say that so I don't piss the people off. So, yes, so it's good. You guys will grab that book. I'm gonna grab the book for sure for my team. Last
Sure.
question: what promise did God make to the world when He created you?
Ah, man, that is a really great question. Hmm. I'd have to sit in my thoughts. You can make me think. Um, Man, I don't know. I just continue to be a better father, continue to help elevate people and expose people to the right information that allows them to escape the environment that they feel confined to. Be a voice
Hmm,
for the adversity infused youth.
it's good. It's real good, man. Because I live in the same pocket of wanting to serve the kids. I do it for free. Like that's my thing. I
Yep.
make revenue in areas that allow me to make enough income to do that for free. But there is something to like the want to go back to a place where like when I was there, no one came back for
Yeah.
me. So I go, if I can at least change something up, I'm gonna go do that. So I love that heart of service. And it's cool that you have a mentality of like be an example. I think it's sometimes what needs to be done is not talking to it, but going and doing it
Yep.
so that it can be seen and shown like this is what it looks like. So, man, I appreciate that. I appreciate you and your time. Well done on getting the book out, dude. That's awesome because I think that helps more people beyond you, but also it's going to be cool to have your kids have that piece of you years and years and years from now. Who
Absolutely.
knows? But yeah, dude, appreciate it. You guys who are tuned in, thank you for hanging out with us because you could have been anywhere else in the world. I don't know, looking at kid videos and cat videos and people doing things with cars. But you're here with us. So you get to come hang out. Hopefully enjoy the time with us. Make sure you go and grab the book. If you found something beneficial from the episode, which there's no way you could have, apply it to your life. I don't know what it is, but apply it to your life. And if you know somebody who could benefit from hearing this, share the episode directly with them. It makes it really easy for you to sometimes reach their heart that you've been trying to reach with other people's words who they listen to. So share the episode. And outside of that, as always, make the most of your off shift moments so you can make shift happen. It's Anthony Trucks and Cash Hasworth signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning into the Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.